NovaTitanProductions.
Hello and welcome to a duel between KVN and Bad Guy 1 in BattleBlock Theater. This is NovaTitan. Let's get started.
Or truth, right? It's the way you get to more perfection. It's the kind of yin and yang, actually. So yes, I think that this simplification of the world to think of, I'm good and you're evil is really misunderstand that in many, not all, but in many circumstances, misunderstand what's happening.
And also it brings back this problem that human beings always had with the ego and this need to be right, and that identifying yourself in each individual discussion and debate and battle and needing to triumph. And even though you desire to be correct, you have to understand when you are not, and you have to appreciate someone who shows you that you are incorrect because they are allowing you to grow. You're not a finished product. There's no way you can be.
Yes, I think that's why I like arguing with people I disagree with, because that's when I learn more stuff. Right. If I talk to people I agree with, I don't learn anything.
So you get together with that private roast dude.
That dude is so much dudes. I just came from his house, and he's crazy. But anyway, he'll laugh. He will listen to this, and he'll be laughing right now.
What does he do for a living?
Yeah, he's a financier.
There you go. There's no fucking way.
Yes.
Goddamn, that cliche.
Yes, exactly.
That's hilarious. That is hilarious.
Yes. So, it is hilarious.
Anyway, pro-gun mercenary.
Yeah, exactly. That's a surprise.
Yeah, I saw that coming. That's really funny.
What was I was going to say something about you?
Arguing with people you disagree with.
Hold on, I lost the train of thought before we talked about my friend. You learn from them. Anyway, I lost the train there. But
no worries.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's another issue that I've faced with this podcast, where people get upset at me for having people on that have opinions that they disagree with.
That's nuts.
Yeah, they think that you're doing a disservice by providing a platform.
That's nuts.
That phrase they keep saying.
Yeah.
Platform.
Yeah,
giving them a platform.
No, I think you have power, which you should use wisely. I have power. I should use. We all have some power in some parts of our lives, and I think it is okay to say you have some power. You do. You have lots of millions of listeners. People respect you. A lot of people, the president, CEOs, they're people power. But the idea that by talking to someone, you're somehow abusing that power, that's crazy. In fact, the opposite. I think that you are shining bright light of day onto ideas. Let people discuss them.
It's also quite schizophrenic. I mean, have you ever seen when a schizophrenic person draws these connections where they have one person and that person met this other person and that person used to work with this other person and that person met Hitler?
Yes.
So you know Hitler.
Yes.
You ever seen those?
Yes.
It's really similar in the same sort of way.
Yes.
It's this weird sort of a thing where you're not allowed to even communicate or be in contact with someone who is in this opposed. It's very childlike.
Yes.
This perspective, and it's very binary.
You can't be you're Susie's friend.
Yes, it's so fucking stupid.
Yes, I would agree with that.
And it's a really common thing today that you're seeing people trying to reinforce this idea and push it on other folks.
Well, I think one thing, I think that, like we're talking about, I think that exposing ourselves to a breadth of ideas, to people we disagree with, I think, and creating an environment in which people can express themselves, it's good. You're not going to get any arguments from me against on that point.
No, and I just think it's better for everybody. Like we were talking about before, when you meet someone who can give you a lesson and express something in a way that makes you reconsider your own ideas that you hold sacred.
I'll give you an example. When I met my wife 30 years ago, I wasn't pro-death penalty, but I would say I was neutral to the death penalty. I would be like, Ted Bundy, the state put him to death. And I had all the kind of conventional reasons, or I didn't really care. He's a vile person. He killed all these people. The families get any relief or whatever, that's fine. I had some concerns because I was a statistician about conviction of the innocent, and I support the Innocence Project, and I am very concerned with police brutality. I have for years been advocating that the racializing police brutality is vile and abhorrent and must be firmly resisted. I think that the prosecutorial misconduct, the way prosecutors lie and put people in prison. There have been many cases of people on death row who are innocent. That should offend our conscience. So even back then, I had some concerns about the death penalty because I recognized that it can't be perfect. We're going to convict some innocent people and also let some guilty people go free. That's not as bad as putting the death the innocent. They're both bad. So I had that concern about the death penalty. But otherwise, I was like, that's okay. My opinions have totally changed. I'm completely opposed to the death penalty now for many reasons, not just the statistical reason, but also I think it's immoral. I don't think the state should put it. I think we can deprive you of liberty. I think we can make sure you're not a threat to society. We can lock you up for the rest of your life. But I think the state should not be taking people's lives now.
There's something extraordinarily strange about locking someone up. It's very strange.
Well, we have a carceral state. We lock up our fraction of people incarcerated, I think, is the same as Stalinist Russia. And we have very long prison sentences, which are nuts. You don't need to put terms.
Especially for non-violent drugs.
Especially for all non-violent offenses, should have much shorter prison. We should have higher certainty of punishment, higher fraction of people who actually commit a crime should be punished. But I think we could cut in half or less the duration of the sentence. I think we'll be able to deter criminals from doing things with 3-month sentence if they are very confident that they will be convicted if they're caught. Whereas now we have a system where most are not convicted, like it's just a smaller thing, which is just ridiculous in the news.
Yes.
And it was never, and only a tiny fraction are convicted. But they're given huge long sentences. It's like they're paying a sentence for everyone that didn't.
Yes.
It doesn't make any sense, and it's expensive. It ties up our prison system. Actually, can I go to tell you another story?
Sure.
So there's a situation a few years ago when there's a very famous director and writer by the name of David Simon, who I consider a friend. He was a wire. He was a showrunner for a bunch of other very famous, wonderful TV programs. And he started his career actually as a reporter in Baltimore. He was a beat reporter and then went on to write with the wire and so forth. And he told the story, actually at Yale, to students about how he had just come back from a summit. President Obama was still president, where was trying to help the students to see that you can find common ground with your political opponents, and that you need to listen to them and talk to them in order to find that ground. And so he told the following story. He said, I just came back from Camp David, where there was a meeting about how to reduce incarceration in our society. And the Koch brothers were there, and the students all pissed, and Newt Gingrich was there, and the students all pissed, and a bunch of liberal people were there, and the students were really happy about that. And then he said, well, why did you go? How could you associate yourself with those evil people? And he said, look, the conservatives want to reduce incarceration because it's expensive. The liberals want to reduce incarceration because it's unjust. And the libertarians want to reduce incarceration because the state should be depriving people of liberty. And I can find common ground with these people and reduce incarceration. Why would I not talk to them? And the students didn't seem to understand that. They were like, they couldn't get it.
That's why they shouldn't be able to vote.
He's 30.
Yeah,
He's 30.
I think he should be 25.
He's 30. I mean, and so I don't know how we got onto this. Like talking. It's so much fun because it's like we're all over the place. But how did I get on this example? We're talking about talking to your enemies, was it, or something else?
Yes, we're talking about people telling you shouldn't associate with people that have varying opinions.
Yes. And I know we were talking about incarceration and prison sentences and so forth. So we have a horrible problem in our society with incarceration. A large fraction of our populace is incarcerated. We deprive, after you pay your debt to society, we often have these depriving your right to vote, which I think is wrong. You pay your debt to society. You should be able to re-enter society. That's what
taxes.
Yes, exactly. Yes, exactly. You were in prison for 10 years. That's enough. You know, now we want you to feel part of society. We want to welcome you back if we have that vision of justice.
So how about the registered sex offender?
That's a serious problem, especially for crimes, these crazy cases which offend our conscience.
Well, I know a guy who got charged as a registered sex offender because he urinated outside.
Yeah, that's nuts.
Caught in the South urinating outside.
Yeah, that's nuts. That's just prosecutorial abuse. Or, you have these Romeo and Juliet laws which are not in every state now, thank God. Alas, they're not in every state. You have a 16-year-old boy and a 14-year-ld girl. There has to be exception for that kind of sexual practice. They're exchanging sexually explicit images. They should not be considered sex offenders for the rest of their life. That's nuts. So all of those things. But the problem is not only do we have a huge fraction of people in prison, we have extremely long prison sentences compared to many European countries for the same crime, and it's costly, it's unjust, it's ineffective. I think we should change the policies on this, and maybe we will.
There's also
not interested in being killed by somebody who could kill somebody else. You should have been in jail for a while, 20 years, some amount of time.
For murder?
Yeah, for murder.
You think 20 years is enough?
Well, European standards are about 20 years actually, and they're different things. Like if you want to deprive them, if your vision is they're being punished for the killing of a life, therefore they've surrendered their life, it's sort of eye for an eye kind of justice. They would be after their lives in jail. Yes. And I can debate whether that's reasonable or not. If you want to provide a public safety reason, people often age out of their violence. So a lot of men, typically most of our men do these things. By the time they're in their 40s or 50s, they're much less violent. Testosterone declines. They get older and wiser. They're not interested in criminal, that kind of criminal behavior. Many of them are not. So that suggests you don't need life sentences for murder. And I think it also depends. And we have gradations of murder. We have like the impulsive stuff, the intent matters, the planfulness matters, the depravity matters. All of these things are factors. And I don't think we should have a one-size-fits-all incarceration for murder. Yes. What do you think?
I think it depends entirely on the circumstance. If two men are engaged in some sort of a dispute and one winds up killing the other one, that's a big difference between that and someone breaking into your house and killing your daughter.
Yes, correct. And I also think even in that, I really am opposed to these standard ground laws. I think those are, if you have the opportunity to avoid conflict and to avoid, you are not, I would prefer as a state to require that you walk away, even if it makes you feel embarrassed, then give you the right to kill someone for offending you. And those videos of the guys that shot the guy on his knees in the parking lot, I forgot what state it was, not long ago, a year or two ago. They got into an altercation in the parking lot. Like 5 words with someone in the parking lot.
Shot guy on his knees?
Yes, there was no threat to him, and he was not prosecuted on the standard ground argument, which is nuts.
Why was the guy on his knees?
I forgot. He said, "Don't shoot me" or something.
Oh,
so it was crazy.
And he didn't get prosecuted.
I don't think so. We can look up the facts. There were several cases. There were several cases like this. But I remember when I was doing Shotokan karate, my sensei Kazumi Tabata. This was years ago, 30 years ago now, and he told us the following story. He said there was a sensei in this village in Japan, and the students were coming to the dojo, and there was the best student, and then all the other students, and they were walking through the village, and they approached a horse that was on the street from the rear, and it startled the horse, and as the horse reared up and kicked its leg, the best student instantly did a kind of avoidance, twisted his body and avoided the kick, and the horse's leg went right in front of him. All the other students were amazed at his ability, and they get to the dojo and they tell the sensei, this is my sensei telling me the story, telling all of us the story, and those students get to the dojo and they tell the sensei the story, marveling at the ability of his master student to deftly avoid the strike. And the sensei is very angry, and they don't understand why. Why is he so angry? He said if he were a really good student of mine, he would have walked on the other side of the street. He would have avoided the horse altogether. So the real wisdom is to avoid avoidance of conflict in the first place. There's no reason to seek out conflict.
Yeah.